Hello, everyone. We are so delighted to be present with you today for this beautiful second part, really, of what we believe is going to be three parts to the fantastic information that Janet Hickox, our wonderful resident astrologer here at Angel Heart Radio, is going to be sharing with us. So please do stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to comment, ask questions, please do on our Angel Heart Radio Facebook page. So if you're watching anywhere else, head on over there or to our YouTube channel. And in the meantime, I'm going to, maybe I'm not. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I had a mental blank, everyone, and then I had no clue what I was supposed to do. Here we go.
It happens to me all the time.
Here we go. I can't tell if it stopped, so I'm going to stop it. Okay, welcome back, everyone. And we are powered by love. And you're going to really hear, see, understand probably even more today just why this is so incredibly vital and how much of a choice it really is for each individual on the planet. Just delighted to be with you again, Caroline Cross, as always.
I know I'm very happy to be here with you, Anayah Joy Holili. And as always, and it's just always exciting to be here. And it's a beautiful day here in Brisbane. And so it's all flowing. Synchronicity is around.
And welcome, Janet Hickox, our fantastic astrologer, living-astrology.com. Everyone, write it down, open it up, make sure you keep that information. It's important. Welcome,
Yay.
Janet.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you, Caroline and Anayah, for having me back a second time to talk about this very big subject that we discovered just before we went live here today that probably needs a third part. Right?
Yes.
Kind of bringing it all back together because it's a huge subject, some of it not pretty. And yet there's a rightness to everything that is happening and that will be happening as time goes on. And, we weren't alive back the last time this kind of major change happened. That would have been in 1731. And I know I certainly wasn't here, at least not that I remember. And so, we don't have anybody living at this point in time to tell us about how crazy things were in their world at their time as things were progressing. So for us now, as we stand here on the precipice of this change, that just to go backwards a little bit to bring you guys up to speed, if this is the first time you're hearing this information, we talked about, what was it, maybe 3 weeks ago, about the human design astrology mutation that is occurring. It's slated to actually happen in 2027, but as always, we're sort of in the throes of this energy as it's building right now where we live and breathe as this change is upon us. And what does that mean, right? Because it's last time we were together, we went through a list of about 10 different symptoms with varying symptoms of things that would tell you that we're in the midst of something. They're very similar to ascension symptoms if you follow the ascension work by different people out there. And one of the biggest ones is sort of the turbulence that we're feeling right here, as for all of us, there's this sense that we feel there's a change coming. And some people on the planet are always in that resistance. They are holding on with tooth and nail to the old way of being. I think when we talked last time, we said about 1/3 of the people
Yeah.
are totally clueless that
Yeah.
anything is happening, that there's anything that they need to direct their will toward or their awakening toward. Another third of the people are aware and they're willing. And then there's the other people that are absolutely asleep. They'll have to wake up at some point, and hopefully they too will be willing, because there is change upon us. I think you only need to pick up the news, right? Look at your phone and you see the results of some of the changes that are happening on the planet. And it makes me feel, I don't know if it makes me feel good. I wouldn't say that, but it makes me feel better that
Mm.
there is some purpose to this chaotic time that we're in, and that it is leading us to a time period where we will embrace more love energy. So if I can bring up a graphic really quickly and share my
Just
screen
before you
here.
do that, can I just say to everyone listening,
Yeah.
if you're listening or watching, I should say, anywhere else other than Angel Heart Radio, because this will be a podcast later, head on over to our Angel Heart Radio Facebook page or our Angel Heart Radio YouTube. And I just want to welcome everyone. We've got some wonderful people. I think this might be your first time with us, guys. Welcome to the live stream. It's fantastic to have you with us. If you have any questions throughout the show, please don't hesitate to ask them. We really want to inform you and help you to really feel by the time you leave this show today that you've got a better handle on what might be occurring for you and globally. Because as Janet said, and I've certainly been experiencing, it's a real roller coaster ride at the moment. But it's purposeful, and it's really important that we tune into that, because otherwise we begin to feel like we're victims of something that we can't control, instead of participants in an incredible wave of love that, yes, as Janet said, it might look a bit sticky today. And, you know, Janet's one of the very few people I would have on to speak about this. Very easy to funnel into fear.
Yes.
This is all about love and our choices in every day about how we tune into that. Thanks, Janet.
That's great to say, Anayah, because indeed, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about will seem a little bit fear-based or seem a little bit fearful or may trigger that reaction within you. But really, all of that would mean is that there are these vestiges of fears of survival that are still within us, that are coming up to the surface to be sort of exposed to the light and then released with love to a very loving, kind universe. And
so it'll be a good idea to remind people of that as we move forward, Janet, because we'll have new people joining us too, of course.
Right. So all of this will be about love, and all of this will be about the turnover. I almost wanted to call this sort of the return to Eden, because in a way that is what's happening, is that we're moving back toward, and I don't know that'll happen relatively quickly, but right now what we're seeing is the demise of the old and making way for a new way of being. And we're going to talk about what those kinds of signs and signals are that we may see. But first, I want to share with everybody what a human design chart looks like and where some of these energies are popping up. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, Anayah and Carol Ann. It says you've disabled that for me.
No, it must have happened when we went live. Just give us one little second.
Yeah, just change your setting or whatever.
Make sure we're allowing you. I'm going to put, there you go. That should fix it for you.
Yay, it did. There we go. So you're going to see a graphic here that I'm going to need to make a little bit bigger, just because when I copied it, it wasn't quite very big. So what you're seeing, everybody, is what a human design chart looks like. It's just the bare bones. It's broken down into just the energy centers. And human design is an astrology system that is the synthesis of 4 different divine systems. For example, the Jewish Kabbalah is, you see elements of that here. The I Ching, which is a Chinese divination system. Astrology, of course, is within this system, and Eastern astrology, and as well the Hindu chakra system. So if these look sort of like chakras, that's because there is sort of a crossover here of that energy. As well, there are 2 disciplines that are very scientific that are engaged here. One is the human genome, where every one of these little channels and gates that you can't quite see that clearly here because they're not numbered here. But these little areas that are all linked together. Those are similar to the codons that you have in your DNA. And so there's coherence there with the human genome. And of course, all of this is about energy and how we are sharing energy and how we complete each other energetically in every moment of every day. And that takes us into quantum physics. And we see that we can be completed by the energies of transiting planets or by the energies of the people around us, our families, our friends, our coworkers, etc. Now, there are specific centers in the human design that we have to talk about before we move forward here tonight. If you go back to the very beginnings of our humanity, back in the beginning of the dawn of man, maybe go back to about the time where Neanderthal gave way to Cro-Magnon man, and Cro-Magnon man was ready to birth into Homo sapien, we were all working off splenic awareness. Splenic comes from the root word spleen, which is an energy center in human design that really just speaks to where fear is or where instinctual behavior lives. So in other words, you guys might know it as fight, flight, or freeze, right? That sensation of just knowing in the moment that there's danger because our body is wise and our body is leading us out of danger or into knowledge of how to survive the coming winter, etc. So in our early days, we were splenically aware. So we were very in tune with our physical being, and our body housed that intuitive guidance and the intuitive wisdom. Now, long about 1731, we underwent a change, and that change has been the dominant change on the planet. It's in effect from 1731 until 2027. So we're at the last 7 years of that. What is that? 400 years time period there. And this is where we shifted out of splenic awareness and intuition guiding our actions into the area of the mind, mental awareness. And at that shift, everything in the world began to change, right? This is where it was called in our human design chart the cross of planning. And at that period of time, we began to organize ourselves into communities. We decided that it was good to make bargains with one another. I give you this and you give me that. Trade was established. This concept of you work for us and we'll pay you in money or we'll pay you in crops or anything like that, that all came up. The demands of community were raised during this period of time. And it was a time of intellectual advancement and huge scientific advancement during this period of time. It embodies the industrial revolution. So there was a lot of change that happened in that period of time. The industrial age, organized workforces, the institutionalization of things like education, of science in and of itself, of medicine. Modern medicine became an institution through hospital systems and insurances and all of those kinds of things. The modern idea of a nation state came to be. Rulership from above, right? Where there was this God that was outside of us, above us, source, energy, as opposed to in the splenic awareness times where we were all a part of nature. And there wasn't, we weren't separated from nature. So when we became mentally aware, we separated ourselves somehow from nature. And by the way, this isn't like our bad, we did something wrong. This is all in right and perfect harmony for how it is that we were going to establish our evolution here on the planet. And loyalty through bargains became a thing, right? We hear that often right now, even that people thinking you're disloyal if you don't believe the same things they do, or that you're unpatriotic if you don't believe the same things that someone else does. And at this late stage of this old mental awareness, all of our institutions are breaking down and falling apart. Governments, the medical institutions, the educational institutions, the economy. Eventually, the military is probably going to have that same kind of issue. And any other system that you can think of that has not been created in a sustainable way is likely going to have some issues over these next several years as we come out of this cross of mental awareness and into what will become solar plexus awareness. So here is where we are moving. Now, in human design, the solar plexus is the center for emotions and moods and sensitivity. And some people in your charts, you may have this center. If you have your own human design chart, you may see the center is defined or colored in, which means you are broadcasting emotion and you are creating, if you will, the emotional wave of the planet. About 50% of you have that defined. And it means that the other half of you who have it open, or it will be white like this in your chart, you're absorbing that emotional energy from the people around you, amplifying it and rebroadcasting it, and giving away your power, so to speak, to the emotional wave on the planet. So, right at this point in time, we are not really good at dealing with emotions. I always say, we're working on gaining emotional intelligence. We gained IQ, mental intelligence here, or intellectual intelligence up here, but we haven't gained emotional intelligence, and that is what is happening over these next few years. So, if we talk a little bit about how the solar plexus works, I described it as a wave, and as a wave, it's a motor. It has this energy to it, and the wave comes from anything can trigger this wave, right? Somebody says a chance comment to you and you take it wrong because you're at the low part of your wave, and it might take you into melancholy or depression, to be followed the next day by maybe you seeing the puppy down the street and it brings you up to your high, and then the next day you're back down to the low, and sometimes it's up and down several times during the day, or through any given 24-hour period of time, because we're not. It makes such sense because some people, you might have the slower rise to the top and you have the longer drop. Other people are doing this more frequently. Some people have the precipitous, like the slow rise to the high and then whoosh, drop to the bottom. And
can I just say here that the other day, thank goodness for Carol Ann, I was in such a state. I was completely over-identifying with someone. I was so swamped with this energy, Janet. It's taking me a couple of days to come out of it. And it was only this morning, actually, when I really understood and realized, because I was thinking about our show today, this is what was going on for me.
Yes.
It wasn't what I thought it was. And
it's never what we think it is now. That's the truth.
That's the thing. So I'm wondering if anybody else is having that. And please do let us know in the comments on my live stream on Angel Heart Radio.
Yeah, thanks, I would love to find that out too, because I think it's prominent right now. And that's because we have not had anybody telling us how to work with our emotional energy, right? Everybody has been sort of in a repressed mode with their emotions, and a new wave comes along and it jacks up the energy, or it drops you to the bottom of that energetic wave. And what we have to become is more neutral in our reaction. Like if we could make that line, if we could make that wave into more of a line or just a very, smaller blip, then we would not be so emotionally engaged in the highs and the lows. So what we're really learning here over these next several years is about how to not be emotionally reactive, and how instead to become emotionally responsive, to become responsible, so that we understand that that there's some kind of emotion that we're feeling, and before we blurt it out there at someone else or cause someone else some pain or wounding, that we're going to stop and we're going to breathe and we're going to decide, we're going to make a choice. What am I going to do with this energy? What does this energy mean for me? Is this my energy? If you have an open emotional center, you have to ask yourself that all the time, because you are empathic and you're picking up other people's energies. And eventually, over time, what this does is restore authority. And that's a big word if you think about that one. It restores authority to the self. And we start to rely on our own beings, on our own self-sufficiency. You hear it now out there. People call it their sovereignty or their sovereign self. That's a big word that I hear periodically in the spiritual world. Really, what they're saying is that we're moving to this time where sovereignty or self-sufficiency or the order of the authority of the self comes to the forefront, where we're not so reactive to what the world is bringing us. But in the short term, remember one of the symptoms of the change that we're undergoing was where old memories come up, right? Where you can't remember where your glasses are or where you put your keys, but you can certainly remember that time that your best friend told you you looked fat in that outfit and now you're really upset, right? You're hurt. You can certainly remember that, but I don't know where my glasses are, even though they might be on my head. So that's also a kind of phenomenon that's happening at this point in time, is people are dealing with old stuff that's coming up, those emotional triggers. Like for you, Anayah, whatever it was that you discovered about what you were feeling might have been related to something that happened in your youth, in your childhood, in your young adulthood, that caused a pain or a wound or an emotional reaction that then is coming back up again for you to respond to instead of react to. So it's kind of a little bit of a way to gain insight into your own places that need to be cleaned out, cleared up before we go into the mutation. Does that make sense?
Oh, look, it makes a lot of sense, Janet. And the other thing it really does is it makes me realize how when I'm really, Gabby says, oops, I didn't mean to put the laughing face in the
Do it. It's okay.
You're kind of right, Gabby, because it really is as quick as that. It really is boom. And I felt completely overtaken and I'm exhausted now from it. But it's made me realize a lot of things. Now, Ursula is saying, as we move into the new cycle, I'm reminded of how the angels, key word here, Ursula, perhaps do not have huge emotional ups and downs, right? Yeah, no, they don't. Seems you are asking us to consider this angel human state, perhaps, question mark. This is a very powerful question.
Yes.
Questions, Ursula. Marianne's joined us. Thank you very much, guys. Wonderful to have you with us. Any response to Ursula about that, Janet, before
Yeah,
we go on?
absolutely. Because one of the things that's happening is that we have been in our evolution 1/3 based in the animal kingdom, right? 1/3 animal, if you will, 1/3 angel and angelic, and 1/3 human. As we move on, we are letting go of the animal part of us, that part of us that was flying by the seat of their pants in terms of intuition or instinct, right? And reactive, right? That part of us is leaving. And in its place, then we become sort of dual, 50% angel, 50% human, even maybe more human than what we have been. I mean, it's hard to call yourself human and humane when there are children that are hungry, when there are people that are without work and no safety net to get help, or we have immigrants here in cages or, locked up. We could go on and on into some of the instances that in around the world that point to us to we're still holding on to some of those more animalistic tendencies, and we'll be letting those go and becoming more of that humane self. But I'll tell you what, humanity is changing, but it's from the inside out. So even though what we're seeing seems to be all coming from the outer world, it really isn't the outer world that is preventing or presenting us with that change. It is that fact that we're changing from the inside. So the mirror that we are seeing the reflection in is helping guide us through these very powerful changes. So if you can remember that, then you're no longer a victim. You're not a victim of somebody's comment or somebody's intruding in your territory or taking your toys away from you. You are processing something that's deep within you in order to become more human and more angelic.
So important. And it reminds me of that wonderful comment. I'm not sure whether her name's pronounced Carolyn Mace, Carolyn Miss.
Carolyn Mice. Carolyn Mice.
Mice?
Miss Mice.
I don't know, but you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
I remember hearing a really powerful sentence from her, and that was, the other side of victim is victorious. And I was like, because exactly that is the other side of it. So if you're in any kind of victim mode at all, please, please, please do not beat yourself up, because you have the option to go to the other side of that energy. And
Yeah.
we learn a lot by what we experience when we are in that victim mode. It's when we choose to stay in it or feel we have no other options, because we are in that reactionary energy, as Janet's speaking about.
Yes.
That's where we can get stuck. So this is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And so the mutation that we're undergoing is first changing us from the inside out, but it's being poked along by changes that are occurring in not just the Earth, but around the solar system. So the sun, even in this case, is creating change for us on our behalf on a cosmic plan sort of basis, through varying states of solar flares and solar quiet. And low solar activity, by the way, allows more of those mutative particles. I think we did talk about that last time. More neutrinos and cosmic rays and gamma rays can come into the planet and start that evolutionary process during low solar activity. But what we're going to see now is that switching over in the next few years to higher solar activity. And that's natural, right? The sun has its 11-year cycle of high activity, low activity. But I think that this next solar cycle is going to be a very powerful one, because it's burning away, burning. Think about California, think about Australia last
Yeah.
year,
Definitely.
burning away what no longer suits. Where we have created unsustainability, it will be burnt away by fire. That seems to be the mode of operation in this particular
Yeah.
changeover. Now, that creates fear. As soon as I say that, I can almost feel the fear, coming back, people going, fire burning, I don't want that. And it creates resistance. But from a very scientific point of view, that very resistance that's created out there absolutely supports the change, because those reactionary results create the possibility for people to become more response able in that, instead of reactionary. So we really do want to have those changes, and all those crazy chaotic things that are happening out there tell us we're on track, right?
Yeah.
That we're headed in the right direction, even though we may not like coronavirus, we may not like all the division and the polarization, but all of that is showing us that we are indeed changing, that things are changing on the planet.
All that old is no longer serving us in any way. It's no longer
Yes.
working. We have Asa asking a question, if I could just pop that in here before I lose it. She said, will we become, I imagine it's a she, forgive me if not,
Yes.
will we become more communal / tribal?
No.
There you go.
No.
And
In
see, that
fact,
one might be the opposite to what you might expect that response to be, but
yes.
you're going to explain it, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, I would have thought that same thing, but we are actually in tribal energy now,
Yeah.
right?
We are.
This time period has been all about the tribe, the supporting of the community, and nationalism, and all of that kind of stuff has been born through this time period. As we move on into the next time period, we are becoming, remember, we're moving authority from outside of us to ourselves, to being within us. So it's really much more individual energy as time goes on, which feels a little odd to us, because I think I can hear the word selfish in my head. And I can see that that's, the very first days of this actual transition are in the line of the I Ching called selfishness. So the very beginning of this whole thing is about selfishness. But I think sometimes you have to go to the nth degree of something to really understand where the middle ground is. So where we have been very communal and very much, tribal in our expression, the opposite, the complete opposite of that would be selfish, right? Or self-centered.
Mhm.
And selfish. I think when you come back to the middle, you're in self-centered. And that becoming self-centered does not take away from the group, it adds to the group. When everybody is being responsible and self-sufficient for their own well-being, and not necessarily needing all of those institutions anymore to support us, and those safety nets not needing to be there. The real truth is that we're moving to what will become our doing things that make us feel good, right?
And
That
it's
are
not
our
when you
truth.
should be, like we were taught that to love oneself was an act of pure selfishness. And of course, we understand more and more now, don't we, that the more we actually love ourselves, care for ourselves, have tenderness for ourselves, the more we have available to express, to harmonize with, to vibrate, and to be on
Yes,
this planet.
absolutely.
Can I just go back to the fires for a second? And I'm
Sure.
sure it's the same in America as it is here in Australia. Nature is a wonderful example for us all, because in Australia, many of our trees and plants have to have fire to burn so they can then regenerate and start anew. So, to me, I'm just sort of getting the feeling that what the fires are doing, it's getting rid of the old, and it's giving us the opportunity for the new to regenerate and for us to step into that
Absolutely.
energy.
Yeah, exactly, Carol Ann. It's sort of like the phoenix, right? The phoenix goes, it burns up and into ash, but is reborn from the ashes. There are trees here, lodgepole pines come to mind right away, that need the extensive heat, the
Yeah.
heat of a forest fire, not just a, small
Yeah.
little fire, but a big forest fire in order
Yeah.
to release seeds.
Yeah.
And so in order to repopulate, they have to have fire. Other trees here on the West Coast, the redwoods, the cedars, and I don't know if you guys have them. I'm sure you have some kind of form of
Yeah.
these kinds of trees, the Doug firs. They
Yeah.
have very thick bark so that they
Yeah.
can resist being totally damaged, but yet their cones can be opened up and the seeds released. So nature is very adaptive. I think
Yes.
sometimes it's humans that are not adaptive, or we've pushed into a territory where it's not sustainable to live that way.
Mm.
So in
Exactly.
the population swelling in California has pushed people to move from the coastal areas into those mountainous areas or those hill areas where the heat has always created fires through lightning or storms and things like that. And so it becomes more conscious to us when our homes are burning, when our
Mm.
schools are burning or hospitals are burning and our infrastructure's burnt up. But we're the ones that pushed into that territory in the first
Yes,
place.
into nature's
It's
space.
like
Yeah.
here in
Into the wild.
Australia. Sorry,
Mm.
Yeah.
Caroline.
Probably the same thing that you guys have experienced. So
Yeah.
it's not to make anybody who's living in those areas wrong. That isn't my intent,
No.
but it
No.
shows us where that we can't be sustainable,
Mm.
right? It's
Exactly.
not sustainable to do that because how many millions, billions now dollars have been put into fighting the fires and
Yeah.
then rebuilding from those fires, only to have fires break out in the same places that burned last year,
Exactly.
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Listen, people, listen.
yeah,
Yeah.
listen. And
And again, it's not to make people wrong. It's not to say you must not do anything. This is to help you to consider choices you may be making. And with all what we've just been speaking about in the last few minutes, Asa wanted to know about the energy for it all for a manifester.
well, we're going to do a third episode here where we're actually going to break this
Right.
down a little bit more in terms of human design. And I don't know that it matters what type you are because you're
Okay.
human, right? You're a human and angel animal hybrid at this point, and you're changing to a human angel hybrid. And no matter what type you are, it's going to affect you.
And I think that show is going to be September 9 here in Australia, September 8 in the USA, correct? Is that
Let me
right,
just
Caroline?
double check the
Yes.
date.
Yes, we did. I'm sorry. I'm like, what? That's the day Mars turns retrograde.
No,
Why are you talking about
in
that?
Australia, it's the 10th. In Australia, it's the 10th.
Yeah,
In the
but here for
USA,
us, it's the 9th. That's when we're going to do the third installment of this show.
Yes.
And God
And that
help
would
us,
be
we might have a fourth. Who knows?
That would be 8:30 Central on that timeline, USA, 11:30 a.m. here in Brisbane, Australia, so on our timeline and other timelines as well pertaining to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So
And,
make sure.
yeah, and we'll make sure we get it right ourselves this time. Oh gosh, that's the problem of living galactic. I mean, we can't live globally, much less galactically. No wonder our alien friends are staying way away for the time being.
For the time
For those
being.
of you who don't know, it was supposed to be last week, and Janet was at the supermarket going, "Hang on a second, what do you mean?
What do you mean? It's tomorrow." She's like, "No, it's my tomorrow. You're today." What? Oh my gosh. So anyway, all right, let's get back on track here a little bit and chart
Yeah.
some more of these changes. One of the things that you can really see happening, and I noticed this actually back in 2012. I think it really busted into my awareness as I was listening to various talks on the ending of the Mayan calendar and what all that meant, is that one of the big things that we're seeing is that the spiritual wealth of the East moving west, more people engaged with Buddhism or Taoism or those more meditative. I read a statistic here that there's more people that are meditating here, transcendental meditation here in the US than there is in India anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we see the spiritual wealth then moving west. And again, it becomes a balance. But then what we also see is economic wealth moving from the west to the east, to Asia. So we have this cross thing going on that is designed to even the playing field between West and East. So we no longer have this concept that's setting us up for no longer having that concept of superpowers, right?
That'd
Um,
be good. Mm.
it will
Mm-hmm.
be good. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough
Yeah.
for nations like the USA to watch their power in the world. We're already seeing it. I mean, Trump has done a great job of making us less powerful in the world, a less powerful voice. And for whatever reason that is, that he was chosen to be the tool to do that, it's happening. It's changing the dynamic between East and West and leveling that playing field, as it were. And all of this began in 1987. And 1987, you might remember, is the date of the harmonic convergence, right?
Yeah.
It was this point at which we were it was the gestation point, if you will, of these massive changes that were coming about. And in 1987 happens to be when human design was born, right? When it was channeled into being.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it happened in lockstep with with the harmonic convergence, which, if you'll remember, was also based on a supernova event that happened way out in the galaxy that also sent tons of cosmic waves and gamma rays and neutrinos and particles that we don't even know the names of, hurtling toward the Earth or to the solar system to change to sort of instigate, if you will, this evolution. Now,
Mhm.
fast forward to 2012, and we had the ending of the Mayan calendar. This was really what we would call a crossing over point, where we were becoming very aware. Now, something's up, right? Time seemed to speed up. And we really noticed, wow, things are just speeding by. It was a crossover point from the breaking up of the old and the starting of the synthesis of what would be the new, even though that's taking some time. And all of that comes to fruition as we move into 2027. And this is where we recreate Eden, if you will. I don't know that it happens all on one day. I think this is a process over time that all will change. Everything that you think will stay will change. And that all of the old structures will fail, the old structures will fall. And this is part where fear comes in, right? As soon as I say that, they're like, yeah, but what about my job? What about my income? How do I pay my bills? Blah, blah, blah. But, the economy is one of those big structures, those big institutions that has been built on false premises, that has been built on a non sustainable model called greed, right? Greed.
Yes.
And that's changing. It may not be very apparent yet, but it is changing, where you see people in government starting to talk about universal incomes and universal health care. And some countries have already gone that direction, right? Where they have something. In this country, they want to label you a socialist, right? They want to demonize it. That's just a part of the West not wanting to let go of the wealth and
Yes.
moving it on over toward a more even playing field. So we have a split on the planet right now, a split between the old Piscean age and the patriarchy holding on for dear life, and the old way of being and our systems and our science and everything sort of breaking down, and the new, which is the Aquarian age, the age of the age of the individual putting their contribution together with others and creating a more powerful whole from the power of the individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do we sort of do we have sort of like some little breakups between now and 27 that people can look to or count
Breakups.
on, or breakups or sequence or timeline?
I wish there was a sequence where I could say A, then B, then C, then D, but the universe kind of hopscotches. I was really thinking about this because somebody asked me this earlier today. It's kind of funny. It's the second time that question has come up. And as I was thinking about that, it's going to be based on our choices, right? What do we choose, right? Can we skip over the whole hullabaloo about the economy being dead by choosing to equalize wealth? If we did that, that would make it different, right? It would make it a completely different story. So I think a lot of what happens and in what order it happens, it's not so much the order in which it happens, but it's how we react to what is happening in general. Like how have we reacted differently in the US from Asia to the coronavirus?
Yeah.
Right. And how, and I'm not saying one way's better or worse. I'm just saying there's a big difference between how the two continents have actually dealt with this particular crisis. And so the choices we've made have taken us down this circuitous sort of funnel of issues where, you know, other countries have kind of come out of that in a completely different way. And I don't mean to be picking on just the coronavirus because it's likely a lot of different things that all of that is happening with that we just haven't even seen yet. So same thing with the education system, right? Are your kids going back to school? They might have been out, right? Because you guys are in a different season, but our kids are not going back to school.
They're back at school. Yeah. They're
in school buildings or from home?
No, in the school buildings. They're at school.
Yeah. No, we're not allowed in the school grounds, right? So we are now picking up and dropping off outside school grounds at the gate. So at this point in time, you won't find any parents in the school grounds or caregivers such as myself in the 2 days a week that I drop the kids.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because it's working. People are feeling much more kind of, you know, at ease with the way things are now. And in a lot of ways, it's given the students, because they're fully supervised, of course, but there's a lot of it. The kids have really stepped up to the plate as well. You know, getting themselves to class on time, etc., etc. Now, Ursula says, wondering if November 11, 2027, this might be for the next show, I'm not sure, will be a big date to look at, 11/11/11.
Possibly.
Okay,
I'll have to pull a chart for that day. That would be kind of fun to look at. I've not heard that date yet, Ursula. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. She's often the person that brings things up that I'm like, I got to go check that out. How come I didn't hear about that before?
I guess that's something we can hear about when we have our next show.
Yeah, 11/11/11. I love those double digits that are repeating. It's almost like illumination, 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 and more light, and more light, and more light. So I kind of like that.
Back to the angel numbers, it's about where is your focus? What is your attention on?
Right.
Are we reacting or are we becoming responsible?
Correct.
You know, everything comes back over and over again, doesn't it? And one of the things I want to remind everyone, this is really important.
Yes.
We are guided by a loving universe. Just because we can't see the big picture does not mean that there is not a beautiful, gorgeous, loving, amazing way of seeing things.
The outcome is going to be wonderful.
And we need to go, it's like childbirth. Anybody that's been through childbirth, we need to go through that. Okay, so you might say, well, I don't want to. Well, hang on a second. There are knock-on effects from that.
If they may not want to, and a lot of people are leaving the planet simply because they made that choice.
And that is absolutely okay. So we need to keep coming back to, we're supported by a loving universe. It's not about fear, getting into our heart space, seeing the amazing beings that we are, the difference we make. And I mean, just look at Angel Heart Radio. We are almost 10. It's in 10 days' time. We are 10, right?
Wow.
And one of the big things about Angel Heart Radio, it's to remind people to remember that they matter in the world. That's all.
Everyone. And as we move forward here, the age that we're moving into is called the age of individual empowerment, or we're becoming the self-sensory human. Self-sensory, take that in for a minute. What does that mean? Where you yourself are the authority about your feelings, about what you want, about where you want to go. No more looking outside of yourself for validation. No more blaming, shaming, victimizing, being the victim. We are becoming very self-aware, self-sufficient. Any word just about that you can put self in front of is what we're becoming. And we're moving from the energy of doing, being, everything about our world right now is all productivity, productivity. How many things can you make? And I'll pay you more if you can do more. If you're a doctor, you get paid this. And if you're a janitor, you get paid this. And that just makes me crazy because a janitor has to deal with way worse things. But we're becoming more being, human beings, right? We're being in our authentic selves. We're being in our light. We're being love. And that is the biggest takeaway message, I think, here, besides the fact that you have a choice, is that we are moving more toward this idea of being authentic, being in our authentic selves. Now, we've been in this mental frame for quite a while, so it's an inborn habit. And our habit is to default to our minds. Even me, when I know better, I still default to my mind to make decisions. And then I go, oh, wait, you're emotional. You got to make the decision from somewhere else. So it's going to take some time, right? As thinking gives over to being more feeling or sensing. And, we've been very strategic. Everything in our society at this point is a strategy to get more money, a strategy to be more successful, a strategy to get more, be more, do more. And that has to give way. And that's going to be giving way to the more receptive energies of personal authority, of being an inner authority for yourself, right? That's that big solar plexus mutation. Ultimately, it leads us to that self-sensory. And in that sensory being lies soul or spirit awareness. We're moving away from that. It's not that we won't recognize the physical world or physical awareness, but we're letting go of this idea of the mind and separation, and we're giving it to the energy of unification, of unity, or of spiritual awareness, like merging spirit with matter, that whole bringing it in and making it one, where we live from a place of true values, right? What are our true values? Do any one of us really believe that we have to live only from the idea of work? I mean, it drives me nuts to think that we work. I mean, it's 5 days a week we work and 2 days we get to rest. Well, why? Why isn't it the other way around?
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't make enough money or we wouldn't have enough production. That's been that old model that will soon be giving away as our true values surface.
And also too, Janet, it's about what are we working at? Is it something that enriches us,
right,
inspires us? Or do we love it? Or do we have to show up because we don't believe there's any other way?
Right.
That's the old model, isn't it?
Yeah, or because your parents put you in a position of having to choose the family business or the family line, because that's what everybody's always done, right? But you really wanted to be an artist, but you find yourself in some other, position that's not necessarily supporting you. So the mutation is here to cause us to change, but that mutation comes with a price, right? Any kind of big change does. Some of the things that we're going to notice first off is that some organs in the body, the sensory organs in the body, the organs in the body that are ruled by the solar plexus, the prostate, the lungs, the pancreas, are undergoing changes. And the prostate's an important one because it's where the sperm is made for reproduction. And that mutation is taking us into a population decline, as for whatever reason during that period of time, the idea of the solar plexus mutation acts as a downward spiral on population. So fewer births, right? Fewer births. Over time, infertility, right? For no expected reason. Maybe coronavirus shows up later as a having brought infertility in some way. It's hard to say how that exactly happens, but there's sterility, right, in this change. And part of that is because one of the gates involved with an incarnation cross that we're moving to, and that we'll explain in another show because that needs diagrams, um, causes us to reevaluate our sex life, our sexuality, and all the while moving more toward an androgynous sort of society. I think that's further down the line. But as male and female become, masculine and feminine become more in balance, there is less, it will be a personal choice as to whether you decide to have children. And a lot of kids that are like my grandkids' age, they're deciding, I'm not having kids.
Hey, and my family too, my son decided he's not having children.
Yeah.
A lot of
And
people are making that choice, and I think it's a really important place for us all to recognize, because there's a lot of pressure on people to have children who actually don't want to have children, and there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't anything wrong with it. But the reason that we might want to have something like that happening is so that the earth can restore herself,
That's
right?
what she needs. That's what she needs.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that are happening, where we see people dying, it's really sad. 100, I don't know how many thousands of people now have died from coronavirus. And then we have the flu coming right behind that here that may take more. And then who knows what comes after that. And all of that is putting pressure, a downward pressure on the population. And that's coming from that solar plexus mutation and its effect on the prostate, but also the attitudes and the emotional field of people who decide they choose that they don't want to have that kind of relationship. Now, here's the other thing. Bargains have been a big part of contracts, bargains, and agreements have been a part of that mutation that we had earlier, right, from 16 or 1700. That's disappearing. So we see things like marriage coming untied and people just living together and choosing to be together without getting married, without having to tie that knot, so to speak. And those bargains disappearing over the course of time, where maybe those institutions like marriage might not be so important anymore.
And even things like, and there's something that Ursula wants to check, even things like, I certainly look at the economy for small business here in Australia, and everybody then began to want a bargain. They wanted everything to be so cheaply made that they didn't actually have to pay anything for it, without asking, well, if I can buy a shirt for $5, who's not getting paid or supported? We wanted the bargain. So, of course, all the local economy, all the local businesses began to dissolve because they could not sustain a fair wage for a fair cost.
Yep.
For an item, for example. So even in that point, bargaining, we have to understand that when we ask for things so cheap, why do we need to have something that costs $2 that we throw away in 6 months' time, when we can spend $20 on a really well-made one that'll probably last us for 20 years?
Right.
We have to ask ourselves these questions because we are the ones driving this. I mean, I know for myself, if I go into a store and something's too cheap, I simply will not buy it.
Right, because you're suspicious. Why is this so cheap?
I don't want to be a part of the culture.
Yeah, that too.
It's okay to take. And when I saw a documentary called Blood, Sweat and T-Shirts, that really opened my eyes to what the cost of our fashion is. So we need to be very aware of that. Okay, now, two points have been raised here for Janet.
Okay.
Quickly.
Yep.
Asa says 5G, question mark. The 5G. Is that for the show?
I don't have any sense about what that's about. I know there's a lot of theories around it, and I don't know if they're conspiracy theories. I don't know if there's real truth to any of that. I know that if you want to know what I think it is that median jump before we go to telecommunication by what do they call that? Telepathy. because the faster we're getting, 5G is going to supposedly very fast, very available. I think it's the fastest way that we'll ever be able to communicate until we get to telepathy. And I think it's a jumping place for that. I don't know the ins and outs of that though,
Yeah.
but my
Well,
thought is that we're moving toward
yeah,
telepathy and even at some point teleporting.
yeah, absolutely.
Woohoo!
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Now, how
So,
early in that mutation that happens, I don't know, because the next mutation doesn't happen until 2438. So there's 400 and some years there for things to happen.
you and I might not be having a show with Carol Ann about it.
No, we'll just have the conversation in our minds, or we'll
Yeah.
just be creating.
We might.
But
Okay.
that's a good question, Asa. I don't know. I just don't know enough about 5G. There's enough other conspiracy theories that end up being bandied about right now. I don't need more. Another
Yeah.
one to try to figure out.
Good question. Okay, so the other one was from Ursula. I just wanted to capture this info. Prostate, lungs, and pancreas will mutate as they connect to solar plexus.
Correct.
Or is it
Right.
move out of the solar plexus energy? I got a bit lost there too.
No, it's because the solar plexus is mutating. Those parts of our body are also mutating. So what
Okay.
does that bring up immediately to me? The lungs, right? They rule our breath and the ability then to take in more breath. And the idea that Saturn and Jupiter are coming together in an air sign in just a couple of months' time, that sets off a 240-year cycle of air sign connections that the two of them make that hasn't been available to us for 800 years. Come on, right? You can't tell me that that's not a part of what's going on. So breathing, taking in breath as a way to calm even yourself before you react, to be able
Right.
to enact a response as opposed to that reactionary
And a
energy.
way to connect with the angels, because this is one of the big connectors with working with angelic beings. It's that
Breathing, yes.
slowing down and the breathing in, and they've shown me so clearly how their energy then begins to mingle with ours when we invite them in on our breath.
Right. So that's going to be important. The pancreas is that one's a difficult one for me to wrap my head around, except that I know that it is one of the centers, one of the glands in the body that produces different hormones and chemicals that keep our endocrine system running, right? That keep us balanced. My guess is the mutation is going to put some kind of pressure on the pancreas to also mutate, maybe different chemicals being rearranged in order to facilitate this change. I don't know if that means more incidences of things like pancreatic cancer, if that puts pressure on diabetes and things like that, but it's all possible because it's undergoing mutation, and that mutation puts pressure in that particular part of the body. So good questions though. Great questions actually.
Yes.
Um, so as we begin to do this changeover, there are some major things that will likely come to pass over time. One of them is that as that mutation takes hold, some of the gates of the emotional center will no longer, or of the root center will no longer connect to the emotional center. One of them is the gate 19, which is why we will no longer have that animal connection anymore. Not that we won't be able to be in contact with animals or have that kind of a connection, that we ourselves will not be animals anymore. We won't
Yeah.
have that part of that DNA activated. So we won't be like animals anymore. So we won't be as competitive for territory or for limited resources, or even violence against women is perpetrated from an animalistic side of the masculine. The masculine not being honored correctly, right? Not having those rites of passage, and no other way to express that really strong masculine energy, for lack of a better word to put it. So we're not going to have that kind of violence against women anymore, that kind of violence against animals or against each other. Again, over time. I don't think it happens on,
Yeah.
January 1st, 2027, but also our dietary conditions change. We'll be moving more and more into vegetarian or vegan diets where no more meat, right? No more inhumane treatment of the animals that we raise for slaughter. And I mean, if you just have ever seen a slaughterhouse and how they treat these animals, you'd stop eating meat right now, right? And a lot of people have because they've seen different movies and things like that. So our treatment of animals as more humane, as more a brother, sister feature on the planet instead of something that we can use and abuse, not a resource any longer. Um, Salt. So let's look at salt here because purifying through salt is something that's ancient, right? From ancient Egyptian times, salt was used as a way to preserve the organs for the afterlife, etc. But salt draws up the toxins and lets them release. The solar plexus then is bringing that up for us as well. Memories being chemically brought up from the salt that we're taking in, and the body becomes more transparent over time as the salts of the body change, as the body's chemistry changes. We become more translucent, more transparent, more see-through. So
Wow.
have you ever seen a child or even a young adult who's got that really white skin where you could just almost see through the skin, it seems like? More of that coming up. So for the short term, our bodies may crave salt in order to go through that purifying time. The body will let you know what to eat and when to eat it and how much to eat it. We just have to trust that our bodies know best and not trying to cut through all the noise of you shouldn't eat that, you shouldn't be that, you shouldn't do that, you should be that. Listening to your body as time goes on to tell you what it is that you need for sustenance. Eventually, we will be able to live on light.
Wow.
Light. In light already is encoded all of the things that we need for life.
Yeah.
We just don't know how to extract that from the light. But
Well, I mean, you look
eventually,
at plants. It sounds kind of crazy, but you look at plants.
right?
And I'm not
It's
saying we're plants, but hey, guys,
right, right. We
they
don't.
this is exactly what they're already doing. And if anybody's ever seen or read that book, The Secret Life of Plants, I think from the 70s, it is such an eye opener and completely changed my relationship to plants.
Yeah.
Mm.
So who knows what changes that happen in our body, but allowing us to take in light and sustain ourselves from light. That is coming. Mother Earth, she's also going through all of these changes with us. That's the reason why she's hot, then she's cold, then she's snowing, then she's drowning us, then she's hot, and then she's burning us, and all of these things, right? Because she's also going through these big changes. And it's stress, right? It's a stress reaction to the big changes that are happening in the chemistry of the planet as well as the chemistry of us and all of the different mutation energies that are popping up. Global warming, are very I have to stop and really think about this because I went through college and really environmental science was my and chemistry and biology were my majors. And so I learned all about the chemistry of this global warming phenomenon. But really that puts Earth in the victim role,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
That
Yeah,
makes us forget that she's a living, breathing, sentient being and totally in command of
Yeah.
herself.
that's right. I
And
mean, we have a certain amount of time, and I do believe this. We have a certain amount of time to do what we're going to do and make our choices. But in the end, it is not going to come down to us.
correct. So these cataclysms, these floods, these fires, they're all a cleansing and purifying of the energy here on the planet. Um, as we move on, these are some of the good things now that
Okay.
we'll be able
Now,
to
before we
see.
do, can I just read this before
Sure.
we go? Because I
Yep.
don't want to lose it. Ursula says, Gemini, Janet, are you also zooming into the gates coming off the human design solar plexus for any more cool clues?
That
I
will
don't
be our third. That will be in our third.
Okay, great, because I don't understand the question.
Yeah, it requires me to have some graphics to show so that
Okay,
people because you can't visualize something that you've probably never seen. And
exactly.
so I'll have to make some graphics for our next time together so that we can really visualize what's happening in the dynamic of the chart itself. So I will have that, just not tonight.
Okay.
So as we move forward, we're going to be able to see, feel, and know another as ourselves. Empathy jacked up and compassion jacked up, including other life forms, right? Another reason why we couldn't eat an animal is because we will feel that animal's pain. We will feel that animal's suffering, and it will be visceral to us. It will be like it's happening to us, to ourselves. So that will be coming on. Caring, loving, and affectionate, yes, but eating one another or eating our, brethren, probably not going to happen much longer. The return of Christ consciousness, which is about true love, right? The Christ light, the Christ consciousness, not the Christ of Christianity and religion that's just been blown out of all kinds of proportion, but the true Christ consciousness, what his true message was. We'll sort of be sandwiched between Buddhic energy and Christ energy and taking in both of the messages that those two very forward thinking gods, maybe angels, whatever we want to call them, were telling us, right? Bringing that in. It might be a more silent world, one that we can hear the birds and the bees and the sounds of the water and the wind, because instead of chatterboxing, using telepathy, and instead of buzzing and making machine noises and butchering trees and making all that kind of noise, it's not happening. Something different is going on. We'll be using technology for good and not so much for the more negative, for war or for destruction. And we become good stewards of the planet, which we were always meant to be, right? That's why in the Bible it says that God gave us dominion. They took that as that we could dominate everything and eat it up and use it to in whatever way we saw fit. That wasn't what that message was. The message was really about being a good steward, a good caretaker of the planet, because we have the knowledge, we have the wisdom, we have the mind to be able to take care. So we should be taking care. Instead, we're using up and we're destroying at a pace that's incredible to me. We'll also be thinking in new ways. Your mind will not work the same way. You won't have those same constructs that your mind has now. The ajna will also be mutating in some ways as we release mental awareness toward the emotional awareness. That means that things like government and money and military and you name the institution likely changing, going away as we realize we don't need, what do we need a military for?
Yes.
Right? If we're living peacefully, if we're living in love, why would we need a military? Again, I don't think that's coming on the first day, but why do we need a government? If we're self-sufficient and we're self-sensory and we are taking care of ourselves, we know how to get our needs fulfilled, why do we need a government to tell us what to do, when to do it, and how to do it?
Right.
Big questions.
And that we're not safe. We won't need anyone to tell us to not. We're
Yeah.
not safe without them because we know better.
We know better.
We
It's
are.
it's going to be all about the big F, the F word, freedom. Right? You thought I was going to say something else. Freedom.
Hanging on for a second there, I thought,
where's she going with this?
It's not two words.
No, it's the big F, freedom, right?
I love you.
Freedom being the hallmark of one of the gates involved in the changeover. The gate 55 in the gene keys, it's capital FREEDOM in the highest expression. And in the gift level, it's capital F, little REEDOM. It's still freedom. In the
Yes.
lowest expression, the shadow is victimization. Out. That means no more corruption, right? That means no more crime. Why would we want to take something from one another if we could get it ourselves, right? If we can make it ourselves, if we could find it ourselves. Sharing resources around the world and not holding things back from one another, not charging exorbitant prices for food just because we can get away with it, not charging exorbitant prices or cheap prices for whatever because it's going to be evened out. Money is a symbol of our collective victimization at this point in time. right? Money, right? Think about what you just talked about with the t-shirt thing, right?
Mhm.
And people wanting, cheap clothing, which then means that we look for cheap labor, which has been found in Asia and, third world countries, third world nations, if you will. That will be gone. That will be
Yeah.
gone, right? All of that's gone. But in the next few years, right, these next 7 years, expect more burning, right? Burning energy. Burning because likely we're going to have a lot of solar flares, and that puts in an pressure on the electromagnetic system on the planet here to also change. There might be more fires. We might have magnetic field shifts. That's a huge possibility, where the magnetic north becomes the magnetic south, and that kind of change can be catastrophic to our communication systems, right? We'll have to rely on something different. It could, people say that could take us back to the Stone Age. Well, I think we're smarter than that now. I think we have more, skills that we
Yeah.
could probably do with that something different than what people right now think about. Um, by the way, that solar heat, that heat that we feel burns away our old memories, the memories of the wounds and the pains, where we actually become more clear in who we are. So there's a reason for the heat. It makes sense, right? And that part of evolution would be the heat rising. Um, Another clue that you'll know that this is underway is animal migratory patterns will be disrupted as they don't know where they are anymore because the magnetic field is off. You'll know
Yeah.
that there's something up as well when you see the geese going the wrong way, or they go west instead of east, or north instead of south, or whatever direction they move. Um,
Really great pointer. And we know that people have looked to animals and their patterns to inform them
mhm,
about what's happening or imminently happening in the environment. So this
right.
again is perfect, really.
Yeah. I remember hearing that remember back in, I think it was 2004, the big Indonesian earthquake that had then produced that huge tsunami that wiped out, I don't know, 100,000 or more people, 250,000 people, I think it was in the final count. Yet all of the animals were spared pretty much because they were in tune. They knew, and they
Yeah.
moved to higher ground. People were even commenting, well, where are the animals? um, because the animals had gone. And if we were in tune, a lot more people might have been able to be saved because they would have also realized something's up. What's
Yeah.
up? Right. So that being something that we'll be watching for as well. Um, there's God, so much more we could go into. It's too funny, right? The one thing that I was really interested in today that I started studying and looking at was the gut brain connection, and how the gut is what we think of as the solar plexus. And in the solar plexus, in the body, in the physical, is this center of ganglia, which is a bunch of nerve endings that come together that it's acting like a brain. It becomes our second brain, they call it. And it is where 500 million neurons live. Neurons transmit information between all of the parts of the body to the brain and back and forth. That gut, that solar plexus, has more power to process energy and information than the brain has. That tells you right there that that shift happening is not just happening in awareness, but literally it's in the physicality of who we are. It's changing us. We might be feeling more cravings for weird things, right? As our enteric nervous system is also being upgraded. The enteric nervous system is the system that acts autonomously from the brain. So it says, oh, this is out of whack. We better produce some more hormone over here. So it tells a message to the gland that produces that to make that, right? It's separate from the brain, the nervous system. The gut thinks, your solar plexus thinks, it has awareness. So we're moving away from the reactionary energy of that solar plexus to the more responsive energy that is thinking from that level of awareness and not from that reaction. So the emotions here are the key, right? Guarding our emotions. We can no longer suppress them, but we can no longer just vomit them onto other people as well. We have to become more responsible for what we're doing. We have to learn to work with our emotional energy. Now, I know we're over time here, aren't we? Or am I wrong?
No,
Yes,
no,
we
I
can.
don't even know what time it is because,
Yes, it's 1:45.
okay.
1:45.
12:46.
I'm happy to be here if you've got more to share. I don't know whether Carol Ann needs to leave or not.
I think I can cover the next part with in that third section, because now I really want to go into the mechanics, if you will, of your human design chart.
Okay, so can I just ask Carol Ann, do you need to leave, love?
I can stay for another few minutes, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
but
so you need to leave.
if Janet's going to do it in the next show, then we'll only need a few more minutes today.
Well, I don't know. So what I'm saying is, if you feel
I've got the message.
don't hesitate just to pop off. Because
okay. So maybe let me just take another 5 minutes or so here.
Yep, that's good.
So for our next session, which for me will be, for those here in the US, it'll be on the 9th. For those of you in Australia and maybe even Asia, then it will be on the 10th. Bring your human design chart to the broadcast. If you don't have your human design.
Here's a good point here, everyone. I'm having my human design reading with Janet. I'm so excited.
On Friday.
Yours too. You can
By
book
Friday.
a private reading with Janet at living-astrology.com. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you for that, Anayah. And at the very least, if you do not have your own copy of your human design chart, still go to that website and sign up. You get a free chart and a free report. You're going to want to have your chart for this, because we're going to be talking more specifics about how your solar plexus is designed versus how maybe somebody else's solar plexus is designed. We're going to have to look at the channels that connect the solar plexus to the other centers. We're going to look at the gates. The gates are the areas on that solar plexus that are in the process of change, and they all have energies associated with them. They all have fears associated with them as well. You know, in my early days of human design, I only thought it was the spleen that had fear. But the emotional system, the solar plexus, has fear as well, only instead of it becoming a paralysis point like it is in the spleen, it shows up as nervousness. It shows up as anxiety. So we have a lot of people now all drugged up on various, antidepressant pills, or, what are those other things that people take the anti-anxiety pills, I guess is the best thing I can call them. And a lot of that has to do with the solar plexus as well, and our inability at this point, our lack of emotional intelligence. We don't know what to do with all of that nervousness and the fear that's being evoked by these emotional changes that we're going through. So again, we've seen a lot of that. That's increased tremendously, at least here in the US. I bet in Australia and Europe as well. And that again will change over time. So have your human design chart. If you can get a reading between now and then, my time is limited, but you can do that. I can't do everybody. A lot of you out there have probably already had human design readings, but at least have your chart and the little report that comes with it, because that at least gives you a kind of a view into the human design and how you're designed. Then I can share the screen perhaps, and we can really have a conversation about how this affects us in total. Now, let me just say something here in closing, a summary, if you will. There are a lot of things changing. One of the biggest, perhaps, is in the way that we will create on this planet. And the creating on this planet has to become more sustainable. I think we've all seen that handwriting on the wall. We can't keep doing the things that we've been doing, because it's psychotic to think that we're going to come out with any other kinds of results other than what we've had by doing things the same way, right? That's like the very definition of insanity. We are redefining our power. The power is shifting here from us giving our power away to the outside world, or to an outside God, or an outside entity, an outside government, and we're taking that back. We're individualizing our power. We're organizing ourselves around sharing, right? Sharing our sustainable resources, right? Finding new ways. We are creative people. I mean, oh my God, we're creative people. We can find a way. Even if we were marooned on an island, we could find a way to survive as long as we had water and as long as there were some sort of food sources there. We would find a way to create more comforts, to create a toilet out of coconut shells or something, right? We could do this. So we can create a sustainable world, and by sharing instead of withholding or being greedy. Um, One of the new concepts will be about creating through faith, faith in the benevolent universe, in a God that is benevolent or source. It doesn't matter what you call it, that there's a benevolent energy, a love energy that is powerful and is that we can trust to sustain us through whatever it is that we're going through. So faith. And we're going to do all of this by doing what feels right, what feels good. Notice I didn't say one time that our hearts are changing. Our hearts are not changing. Our hearts are opening and filling up and becoming more. And that's basically residing in your identity center on the human design chart for those of you who want to know that answer. But so on a soul level, we're not changing, but some of the things that our mind has created for us over the course of time is going to be what changes. So inevitably, this is a good thing.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Chaotic
it's
and a little
very,
crazy in the short term,
yeah,
but ultimately very loving and very much needed on the planet.
Be worthwhile.
yeah.
Definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
And how
Definitely.
powerful we are in our ability to choose peace
Mm,
for ourselves and to choose
love,
sustainable love.
love.
Because we often, I feel, misinterpret what love is. I'm in love with you. I need you in my life. I can't live without you. Buy me a really great big ring. Nothing wrong with a big ring, but buy me a great big ring. But you know what I mean? I'm not judging anybody, but we have these ideas about what love is. But really, I feel we're really starting to look at what is sustainable love, because sustainable love isn't reliant on outside forces, is it?
Right. Nope.
Outside things or events or people. It is something that is more probably magnificent in its scope than I think we can actually visualize at this moment in time.
You're absolutely right, Anaya. I don't think the mind's awareness is able to wrap itself around that concept, but your emotional center can and will,
Yeah.
because that is a feeling, an emotion that is very powerful, as well as an organizing principle behind everything that's gone on the planet. So we're just entering a new phase, a new level. We're leveling up,
Yeah.
as it were, in this case, to put it in gamers' language. And we go through the pain and the wound of that on the way, but the result is going to be magnificent.
And the pain and the wound, I'm really realizing more and more, is actually the attachment and the resistance to the shedding of what has never been working for us anyway, but the delusion that we can somehow make it work if we put more into it.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. So true. So
Yes.
so for the next part of the conversation, have your chart. Have your
Yes.
chart done. You don't have to go to my website to get it either. You can. I would love it if you did.
I
And
reckon you could.
that's
Yes.
living-astrology.com. And if you have had your chart already done, right, you've already subscribed to the mail list and you've gotten your chart and you've lost it, get it, email it, email me personally and say, I lost it. I need another one. I am happy to do that because you're going to need it in order to go through this next part. I think it will be
Fantastic.
helpful for the next
Right.
part to have that with you.
Awesome.
So,
Thank
So
you.
we just want to, I just want to say, Carolyn has said, Janet is so amazing and she has helped me understand myself more. Aisha says, beautiful love and light goddesses. Thank you, as you are. Gail, I have no words, just so grateful for this love. So you have all been so instrumental in today's program, and you guys watching as well that haven't been commenting, your energy is felt and appreciated by us as well.
Yes.
So please share this out. I'm going to actually put them up on Angel Heart Radio on Facebook so that we've got the two of them together, last month's and this month's. And then next month, I'm going to put the three up together. So you can always check in to see what these different parts, if you will, how they come together and how they then begin to open up so that we can understand more and more, but feel the connection more and more. And have certainty within ourselves.
I love it. That's perfectly worded.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Janet, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for having me on a second time and for being open to the third time. I didn't mean to draw this out, but I didn't realize how deep this would actually be as a conversation.
So it's been amazing.
It is amazing.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Wonderful to be alive right now, right? Even if it is a little crazy.
It is, even when it feels like, you said a little crazy, when it feels like, oh, how much more can I actually feel, do, experience? And then you realize, oh, yeah, I can.
Yeah. Who knew?
We are shepherded by a loving universe.
Mm-hmm. Never given more than you can handle.
That's exactly right. We think we can't, but we can. We do. And then we look back and go, wow. And look at the growth that has come through that. For me personally, and the benefits of actually being willing.
We are pretty amazing beings.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. And we're going to become more amazing.
Yeah. For sure. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Anayah. Thank you, Janet. It's been lovely, lovely, lovely again.
See you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone, you take care of yourselves too, guys. And remember, we have a very important role here. And that role is to be this love. We are already this love. To anchor this light. To bask in this light. And to be very kind to ourselves. Because sometimes we're not kind to ourselves. And if we're not kind to ourselves, we simply will not know what it feels like and how are we then going to be kind to other people. So thank you so much for joining us. Look after yourself. Thank you for being with us on Angel Heart Radio. Check out what's happening for our 10th anniversary. I don't even know what it is yet. On
it's going to be great, though. I'm just sure of it.
As always.
Yes, come by and give us your ideas. What do you think we should do? What do you think? It's your Angel Heart Radio as well. And please do remember that all the views expressed by Angel Heart Radio hosts, co-hosts, our guests, and any affiliates are our opinions. We're not here to try and tell you how to live your life or to give you advice for medical issues, legal reasons, or whatever else. So you are in control of all your choices and you are ably in control. So thank you all. Lots of love, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Much love.
Chat. That was awesome. Bye.
Bye.